Hi, I'm Brian Crombie, and we're going to be talking on the Brian Crombie Show. We're going to be talking about politics, arts, business, and social issues on the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. So one of the politicians in Mississauga that I have respected so much is Pat Saito, and she's retiring this year from city politics. After, Pat, how many years on city council?
31.
31 years on city councillor, all in Ward 9?
Yes.
All in Ward 9, and she's retiring this year, so we're not going to have the pleasure of voting for her this October 24th when there is a municipal election. We get to vote across Ontario for municipal politicians. But I wanted to have you in just to chat a little bit about your career and Mississauga and where you think it's going, and also what you think makes a good councillor, and suggestions for people as they're thinking about choosing their candidates. So how'd you get into it 31 years ago? What was the motivation?
Well, I think I kind of fell into it. I'm not a political person. I hate politics. And
you hate politics, and
I hate
you're in
politics.
it for 31 years.
I've been in it for 31 years. I mean, this was never, ever a life dream of mine. But I was volunteer in the community a lot in Meadowvale and in Mississauga Valleys, where we first lived. And I worked on a few campaigns for people that I respected and wanted to see elected. And one day, Ted Southhorn, who was a previous councillor, called me on a Friday and said his doctor had told him he shouldn't run again. And if you ever want to run to be councillor, you need to decide by Monday. I'm going, oh, okay. I'd never, ever thought about it. I'd worked on his campaigns and everything else. And at the time, I was working at the city in the public affairs office.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I was doing, started as a tour guide when the new building opened, and then ended up doing events and writing, doing a lot of speeches, brochures, that kind of thing. But I talked it over with my family over the weekend and, said, well, should I go for it? And okay, let's go for it. So registered on the Monday and spent the next, 6 months, because the elections were in November back then. Spent the next 6 months out campaigning, door knocking, and that was the start.
Fantastic. Yeah. And during the 31 years, any real high points, things that you're really proud of accomplishing?
Yeah, I've started thinking a lot about that, and I kind of have a long list, but I kind of split it into two. One was accomplishments that will carry on, like activities, programs, policies, that kind of thing. And I think two that I'm the most proud of are forming, and I started both of these actually before I was elected. One of the last jobs I did was writing reports for the city to establish a crime prevention association,
right. Okay.
And to establish a road safety committee. And that was actually, I think it was just before I went on my leave to run for office. And the first committees I got on that council established in 1991, 92, were road safety and Mississauga Crime Prevention Association. So I naturally ended up being the councillor appointed to both of those committees. And both committees are still going strong today. They have new names. But it was originally road safety. It was called Mississauga Safe Driving Committee. Mm-hmm. It's now road safety. And Mississauga Crime Prevention is Safe City Mississauga. And I've ended lending my term as I've been chairing the road safety committee. And I did get off Safe City, mostly because I couldn't make the meeting times. Yep. But those two, and it kind of stemmed because my priorities for my entire term seem to fall into road safety and crime prevention.
So, I've been involved, not obviously nearly as much as you, but involved in Mississauga politics for a while, and been aware of it. Road safety and crime prevention comes up every single election.
Everywhere.
Like, Why? Can you never solve it? It's like a forever issue?
You know what? It is a forever issue. And I had, we just had a really bad situation, as you probably heard, of the police officer from Toronto who was shot.
Yeah.
And that was in my ward. And, you know, I had a resident say, like, we have to stop this. And I said, you know what? If you had that magic solution to stop all crime tomorrow, I would love to know it, because and Peel Police would love to know it. But, you know, I think it's something that we're going to be fighting forever, because there are always going to be bad guys out there.
Yep.
And, you know, somehow they manage, you know, Peel Police take hundreds, thousands of guns off the street, and, you know, they still appear. And until every person that gets a driver's license realizes that they're responsible for everybody else's life, that's not going to stop.
Well, we've had this big cry for freedom this past year.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that with freedom comes responsibility. And that's one of the challenges, is we forget that we have this responsibility for the rest of the community. What about the negatives? You know, you and I got to know each other, at least I got to know you, the best during Hazel McCallion's, the inquiry, public inquiry against her. And was that one of the negatives of your time on council, or what was one of the negatives?
You know,
of your time on
I would say, I guess you could call it a negative, but I'd more or less say it was one of the most uncomfortable and upsetting times of all my years on council. And the reason for that was that, you know, I mean, what Hazel did, the way she did it, was wrong. And I don't think any of us that stood up for her, and there were 4 of us on council that stood with her and behind her. And the way she did it, she was, you know, she was carrying out council policy decision for a hotel. Should she have gotten involved in it when her son was involved in it? No. But she did. Did she do anything illegal? No, the inquiry said she did not. Was there a perceived conflict of interest? Yes, it was perceived. But under the Municipal Act, it was not deemed a conflict of interest. Plus, she had declared it several times. I think she missed it once. Right. At one meeting. So it wasn't as if she was hiding it.
Well, even at that one time, I think one of the other councillors said, we all know that Hazel has a conflict, and
everybody
so
knew.
We'll just acknowledge that she assumed that she actually had said that she had a conflict.
Exactly. She had said it, that she had it. So, I mean, she was very open about it. She didn't hide behind anything. But it was the way that she was treated by members of council at that time. And I think what
council really seemed to split into 2.
Oh, it did. It split. I mean, there were 4 of us and Hazel. Pat Mullen, my apprentice, Katie Mahoney, and myself. And it wasn't that we didn't think she should have been told off, but to spend $7 million, actually more than $7 million of taxpayers' money, when everyone knew what the situation was. I mean, there wasn't really anything new that came out of that. Yeah. And it could have been handled differently. Looking back, what upset Hazel the most, and I mean, it shattered her. It really shattered her. Did. But what upset her the most was 2 members of council that she kind of looked on as her kids. You know, Frank Dale and Carmen Corbison. She had been so good to them, more than anybody else on council. And you know, when they had issues, she was there. She stood behind them. Yep. And they turned against her. And, you know, it's like having your own kids turn against you. And that, more than anything else, more than any of the other councillors who were involved in it, that really shattered her at that time.
Is council one today, or is it still split?
Well, you know, I think we're less split than we were, let me put it that way. Right. Fences have been mended. You know, there were people that we didn't speak, we didn't cooperate for quite a few years actually after that. That now, you know, I'm friends with. There are others that, you know, there was a lot of trust lost.
I can imagine.
Back then, and it was never regained. You know, I think we We cooperated, we get along, we work together, but there's still that trust
I can
missing.
only imagine. We're going to take a break, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you a little bit about what your vision is for Mississauga, whether you're optimistic for Mississauga going forward, and what some of the traits you think we should be looking for in good council candidates, if that's okay. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with Pat Saito, the current councillor in Ward 9 in Mississauga, in just a few minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. Real honor of mine to have tonight as my guest Pat Saito, who is the current councillor in Ward 9. She's retiring this year after 31 years in City Council. Unbelievable career. Thank you very much for your service to the people of Mississauga. I really appreciate that, and I know there's a lot of people in Ward 9 that appreciate it, and a lot of people across Mississauga that appreciate it. So thank you very much for that. Are you optimistic about Mississauga? You know, we've got our challenges with growth and with traffic and congestion and issues with Brampton and Peel and things like that. What do you think? Are you optimistic or pessimistic about Mississauga going forward?
You know, I really think it depends on who gets elected in the next term of office. How well council will work together. There are going to be a lot of changes. You know,
It's one of the biggest changes on council ever, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. You know, and we're going to have a lot of new people on council who are going to take probably the next term learning. Region Appeal Council, a lot of changes up
Now,
the
the
region.
regional chair is going to be part-time, I understand.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
That's a big change.
It's going to be a huge change. It's going to be a huge change. It's really going to shift the power at the region from the chair, who is not elected by the public, but appointed by council, to council itself. And, you know, I think there are pros and cons to it.
It almost seems the opposite of what Premier Ford was trying to do, you know, 4 years ago when he was talking about actually electing regional chairs. And I know in Halton we have an elected regional chair, and that gentleman, that regional chair really, I think, leads the region and gets the mayors together to come to a consolidated point of view. Is this a good move, or frankly, I think about it as a bad move?
Well, you know, I'm a little ambivalent about it. I did support it. I don't know how it's going to work. I think it really depends. Well, there's two ways that chair can be on there. I think the chair could be part-time. I don't have a concern with that. But there are two ways the chair could be appointed. One would be an existing sitting councillor who would do two jobs. They would have their own councillor role, and then they would also chair the meetings.
So in the past, if they were elected, they had to resign.
Yes,
And
if
now
they wanted to
don't.
be the chair.
Now they don't. They can
Now
keep
they
their-
don't. It would be, you know, a slight bump up in pay. There would be a deputy regional chair who would be from a different municipality than the one that was the chair. And those two councillors would basically be the chair and vice chair of the region of Peel. I think that particular scenario, it would be very problematic. I really don't see how someone, let's say someone from Mississauga, could do their role, represent their residents, do their job effectively, and also be the chair at the region and oversee all of those departments at the region.
I agree. And
It's
when you
huge.
think about it, a councillor should be responsible for their residents in their ward.
Exactly,
And then all of a
yes.
sudden they're responsible for the residents across all of, of
big
Peel.
area,
And if
yeah.
you've got a chair and a mayor on the same council, it's almost like you've got two mayors on the same council.
Yeah, yeah. Now the other way, which I would prefer to see, is you get a chair from outside, the same way we do today.
Yeah.
But it would not pay the huge salary. It would be a reduced salary, reduced staffing, and reduced responsibilities. And I think that way you've got one person who is basically could be the spokesperson still for the region,
Yeah.
but would not be a sitting member of council.
What about, transit or some of the other big issues that Mississauga is facing. Are you optimistic we're going to solve some of these issues?
Well, I think transit is one of our most expensive costs, and that's been the biggest problem all along since I think it was in the 1980s when all of the provincial grants for transit were dropped, and we never got them back. We're getting gas tax now, which helps a lot, but we used to get like 75% of our bus cost paid by the province, so we could start building a transit system, and we were lucky we were able to start building it then. But now we're going to hybrid models or electric vehicles, which cost a heck of a lot more. And we have to retrofit our bus bays for charging these vehicles. It's not that you can just fill them up with gas. You've got to build a whole new system to power them. And they're not going to drive as far, before you have to recharge them again, as they would on a tank of gas.
So you're not optimistic?
I think it's going to be very problematic. I don't think we're going to be able to grow the transit system as fast as we should be growing it.
I drove on here in Ontario just by the 401 recently. What a disaster that construction is.
Oh, with the LRT, yeah. I don't think the LRT is going to solve the problem. The people that are going to work in Mississauga are coming up to Meadowvale, where there's 46,000 jobs. They're going up to the airport corporate center, or they're going down to the manufacturing jobs down in the southwest part of Mississauga, or they're going west to school or east into some of the office jobs in Toronto. They're not going up and down Huron-Ontario Street. It goes from Port Credit to Brampton. That's not solving the congestion that goes east-west.
So people have been talking for a long time about all-day two-way GO train service on the Milton-Mississauga line.
I was so hoping, when I first came on council, the very first meeting I ever went to, I was elected in November. In December of 1991, I went to a meeting held by GO Transit for the environmental assessment for all-day two-way GO on the Milton line, the very, very first time. And 31 years later, we still don't have it. It was in the budget. It was in a budget, went through the EA. There were 2 appeals at where 2 of the bridges were going to have to be built. And then a new government came in, dropped the whole thing. So I finally got a Minister of Transportation federally, Omar, to get the federal government to fund 50% of the cost. $500 million. They came through with it a year ago. The province has not offered 1 nickel.
You're kidding?
No. We need the province.
The places to grow, not the places to grow, the Big Move analysis that Metrolinx did, it has the highest benefit to cost ratio in all of the Greater Toronto Area, an 8-to-1 benefit to cost ratio.
And they won't fund it. They're throwing billions into the 413. And we need $500,000, $500 million to match federal money that's already allocated. And we could have all of those people going east and west. And Milton's growing. All the jobs out in Milton, people can't get to them.
So you've been on council 31 years. You've watched a lot of successful politicians, some not so successful. We've got some of the biggest changes probably coming up because a lot of incumbents that are not running and potential changes elsewhere. And there was a big show on CBC just this past weekend that talked about there being only 1 person of color on Mississauga City Council, and that was bad when 57% of Mississauga residents are in Canada for less than 10 years. What do you think we, the electorate, should be looking for in a good councillor?
Well, it was interesting when I read that article because I started thinking, what do you consider an immigrant? You can't say there are no immigrants on city council. I'm an immigrant. My parents immigrated from Belfast, but maybe that doesn't count, But, I do think that we need more diversity on council, but I'm going to clarify that and qualify it. You also need to have good people on council. So I've never believed in the fact of voting for someone just because of their religion, their color, or whether they're male, female, or neither.
Right.
That's not a reason
They got to be good
to vote somebody. They need to bring those qualifications that are going to make them good for the job. So, we have we have candidates running all across who are diverse, who represent. We have a lot of candidates who are not.
Yep.
Well, I guess if you call diverse, different color.
Yep, yep.
But
what is it? Is it someone, someone criticized and called, they used to think municipal politics was a farm team, that you would start in municipal politics, then you graduate to provincial,
No.
then you go up to federal, and then someone else said, no, it's like an Eastern European hockey team. It's where failed people in other areas come
Well,
back.
that's what it looks
and
like.
down. And you've got,
Yeah.
you've got two former leaders of provincial parties running for mayors in different cities in Ontario.
Yeah.
You've got a former leadership candidate running for leader and now running back to be mayor in Brampton.
Consolation
You've
prize.
got a councillor that wanted to be a provincial member and it didn't win, and so is what you want, someone that wants to be on council for 31 years, or someone that wants it to be a stepping stone to something else, or someone that's willing to take it as a backseat to what they had before?
I want someone who wants to be a councillor, who wants to represent the people in their ward and in their city and in their region, because we're representing the region as well. I don't want someone who is running for council because they didn't get nominated for the provincial candidate position, or who lost a position, or anything else. And I read people saying, I read some of the literature saying, I've got the experience because I've been on another level of government. That is actually the worst experience to have, because you come into council, all the bylaws are totally different. Our bylaws are totally different from school board. They're not the same as provincial. You do not operate the same at all. So to me, that's more of a deterrent than a positive.
Really? Well, that's interesting, because I think a lot of people don't realize that, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I think you want someone that wants the job, not someone that sees it
Exactly.
as a plan B.
Exactly. I don't want a politician.
So someone that's active in provincial politics or federal politics.
I want someone who is active in the community, who puts the community first. And if someone has a proven record, I don't want someone with a proven record at another level of government, because that's meaningless. Doesn't mean anything. I want them in the community.
CMHC, Build, a couple of different organizations recently have come out very critical of municipal governments, saying that the reason why we have an affordability issue in the Greater Toronto Area today is because municipal governments listen too much to NIMBYism and don't approve developments, don't approve the density that we need. Do you think that that's right? Is that an accurate criticism?
I think it depends on whose ward it is and what the vision of that councillor is. I can honestly say that I've always listened to my residents, but I haven't always voted when it comes to planning. I haven't always voted the way I know that
they want.
So
you've stood up to NIMBYism.
Yeah, I mean, you have to do what's right for that neighborhood and for the city at that time. And we're there to represent the people, but we're there to represent all the people, those that are there today and those that are coming in. And I just had an application for rental apartments. We need more rental apartments there. And it's a good plan. It's going to have some affordable housing. It meets our criteria, which we did go through a public process. We did all the policies, lots of public input, got the support of the community. But once you see what the building looks like, well, we don't want a building like that. Well, you know what? If it goes to the board, provincial board, it's going to get approved. So why would I waste your money just so I can say I opposed it? To me, that's very false.
Yep.
And you've got to be upfront and honest, because, I've seen over the years, you might have a councillor coming in and saying, well, I really don't support this, or I do support it, but, I've got to vote against it because my residents are against it, right?
No, that your job
knowing
is
that
to
it's
make
going to
decisions.
pass.
Exactly.
Knowing that it's going to pass, but I want to look good. Not me, but the person wants to look good, so they're going to vote against it because they know everybody else is going to say no, we're going to vote for it.
Pat Saito, thank you so much for 31 years of service
thank
to
you.
the residents of Ward 9 of the city of Mississauga and the region of Peel. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed getting to know you over the years, and I think you've been one of the most exemplary councillors that the City Council has had, so thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me on.
That's our show for tonight. Pat Saito, a retiring Ward 9 councillor on the City of Mississauga City Council. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We need good city councillors like Pat, and I agree with her that I think that we need councillors that want the job as city council. Don't take it because it's the plan B to something else they really wanted to do. Think about that if you could when you choose your vote on October 24th. Good night, everybody.